YouTube, today we're going to go over the Dialga and Palkia double dragon duo that we used in back-to-back battles. Let's get started and roll the episode. So why Dialga and Palkia? Dialga Palkia is a very interesting duo here. They are both double dragon, although they don't share the same weaknesses because of Dialga's steel typing. And they're pretty strong individually. Dialga is also pretty good mon against Zacian in a lot of cases, which is Palkia's worst matchup. And they're both pretty strong against a lot of common threats, especially like weather Pokemon like Kyogre and Groudon. They can actually handle their own. So I thought, it's a pretty interesting combination. I did want to try it out and I want to see how it would go together. So how was the team formed? They started off with Dialga and Palkia, and I understood that both of these Pokemon really love to Dynamax. So in most cases, I would be Dynamaxing one of these two restricted Pokemon. So that meant that I couldn't really have another Pokemon that really likes relying on Dynamaxing, such as like a Defiant Thunderous on this team. So I decided to go with mostly support Pokemon that could really help Dialga and Palkia sweep or clean up in the late game, and that's what I focused on. Grimmsnarl I felt like was fantastic here because Focus Sash Grimmsnarl is just such a good pairing with the Dialga, especially like on the Zacian Dialga team that we've seen previously. It's able to dish out a lot of damage with support, and Fake Out, Fake Tear, Scary Face are all super threatening, disruptive to opponents' teams that allow Dialga to dish out a huge amount of damage. But it also supports the Palkia because it can do similar things with the Palkia as well. Fake Tears is really scary next to Palkia. The Scary Face option is really strong, and Fake Out to buy turns to deal with the Zacian. And of course, it does help out against Shadow Rider Calyx, which is always appreciated. The next Pokemon I decided to add to the team was Ditto, because Ditto really just likes cleaning up in the end game. I really felt like end game Pokemon were going to be pretty significant because Palkia and Dialga can dish out a lot of damage heavily early on, especially next to Grimmsnarl, pick up some early KOs. And then I thought like a Ditto could be really good, maybe transforming into their Zacian or Calyx Shadow Rider in the end game to clean them up. And I really did think Ditto is a really good Pokemon, and it fits on usually both Palkia and Dialga teams all have Ditto. So I really thought Dialga Palkia would really appreciate Ditto on this team. The next Pokemon I decided to add was Entei actually, and the reason I decided to add Entei is because even though Dialga is decently good against these Zacians, it has to usually max, and then after max is over, it could go down to Sacred Sword, ignoring the Steel Spike boost. So I felt like I needed a Pokemon that could revenge KO. I wanted a Pokemon that was fast because the only speed control I really have on this team is going to be the Grimmsnarl. And then when I was looking at it, I wanted something reliable with like maybe another form of speed control while dishing out a good amount of damage I could clean up in the late game. I really like the idea of hitting Zacian in the late game especially. And then I looked at Pokemon and I thought, Choice Scarf Entei seems really good because it can lead Boulder Strat, and with the telepathy with Dialga and Palkia, it could help out with that way. Then the Flare Blitz could really threaten Zacian. Crunch could be really good to clean up a weakened Shadow Rider, especially if I break its Sash, which is pretty easy to do with this team. I felt like, I had the Entei here and I think it does work on this team. So I added the Choice Scarf Entei. Finally, the last Pokemon, I decided on Amoonguss. Amoonguss with the Spore and Rage Power support, I felt could support the Dialga and Palkia in a different way compared to like the Grimmsnarl mode. It could help against the Tricker mode, which is a little bit strange with this team. I felt like it could really pressure like the Calyx Ice Rider Tricker modes, which I felt like is pretty solid for the most part. I liked having a way to stall out some Dynamax turns, which Amoonguss does pretty effectively, and that is how the 6 was formed. All right, let's go over the items and movesets and the EV spreads of the team. We have Life Orb Dialga up first with the telepathy ability with Roar Time, Flash Cannon, Earth Power, Blizzard. Life Orb Dialga is just really good. It's able to dish out a huge amounts of damage, so Life Orb really does matter in certain Calyx against Zacian, for instance, with Max Quake. And of course, a lot of the Fake Tier combinations that you can pair up with Grimmsnarl, the Life Orb is really crucial to those. Telepathy is the ability of choice because we do have Bulldoze on the Entei, which is another form of speed control, and pressure doesn't really come into play too much anyway, especially since you're trying to dish out a lot of damage with Dialga for some fast knockouts. Roar Time is really important because it dishes out a really strong max move, 150 dragon base power, and yes, it is really powerful. I did try out Draco Meteor for a bit, but then when I was using the max move, it was a little bit weaker, and I ended up missing some crucial KOs that Roar Time could have just easily picked up, and the Draco Meteor max move just was like a little bit of a sliver. So I did end up going with Roar Time in the end. Flash Cannon, I sometimes use Flash Cannon over Steel Beam just because of the fact that I like to sometimes just use Flash Cannon turn 1 if like they lead a Grimmsnarl, for instance. I can go for Fake Out Flash Cannon, and I don't really like Steel Beam as much. I feel like I don't really need the extra power in Steel Beam specifically. Well, I already had the powerful max move in the Roar Time max move as an option. So I think Flash Cannon's okay. Earth Power, really important for Max Quakes, hitting Zacian and a bunch of other things. And Blizzard, it's really nice against Venusaur, especially Sun, since you can change the weather, get rid of that Chlorophyll. Also really good against Landis Varian, and changing the weather is just really nice against Kyogre and Groudon weather teams. The EV spread here, simple 4 HP, 252 special attack, 252 speed with a modest nature, and you do have to go pretty fast Dialga because you do want to outspeed Regieleki with a scary face, because Regieleki can really threaten, especially with Electroweb later on, which can make it a little bit annoying for like Dialga to outspeed afterward, especially like the partners like Zacian, Calyx Shadow Rider. So it's really important to get rid of Eleki quickly, and that's why you have a lot of speed on the Dialga. And the max special attack is pretty important for the Life Orb Calyx. You don't need as much bulk, even though Dialga is a Pokemon that has good natural bulk. It doesn't take the hits extremely well. However, it will be able to survive hits, usually able to take at least one and fire off a powerful max move. And of course, with Grimmsnarl, you can usually get a second one with Scary Face and a bunch of other options. So Dialga doesn't need the bulk in this case because it's supposed to be a fast hitter, especially with that Scary Face as an option. Next Pokemon we have is the Focus Sash Grimmsnarl with the Prankster ability with Foul Play, Fake Tears, Scary Face, and Fake Out. Grimmsnarl, of course, is a really good support Pokemon with the Dialga, and the Focus Sash is pretty important because there's so much power with like Zacian, Kyogre, Regieleki, just a bunch of moves that dish out a ton of damage. That Focus Sash is really nice, especially since we don't have screens or anything to help allow the Grimmsnarl to survive. Focus Sash is probably one of the best items in choice here. Prankster, of course, is the ability here, as we do need to get the priority for Fake Tears and Scary Face support. Foul Play, Fake Tears, Scary Face, and Fake Out is pretty much your standard Grimmsnarl, except Foul Play. Foul Play is the interesting one here. So I debated about Sucker Punch, I debated about Spirit Break. I felt like I didn't need Spirit Break as much. I thought Foul Play could be really nice against certain things, like the Calyx Shadow Rider, some other things that want to boost his attack, and breaking a sub on Zacian, which I felt like was pretty nice. I felt like I never was really clicking Spirit Break that much. Foul Play was also really good against Calyx Shadow Rider and Calyx Ice Rider. Ice Rider is probably one of the bigger ones because Ice Rider is a little bit hard to handle, especially since I don't exactly have the best ice resist. My only ice resist is Entei. It's not exactly the best switch in the Calyx Shadow Rider. I kind of wanted a way to really threaten the Calyx Shadow Rider that wasn't a max option. So I think Grimmsnarl with that Foul Play as an option is really solid there. The Fake Tears, Scary Face is of course one of the best supports for the Dialga, and Fake Out's really good for the Zacians and a few other things that can just really help disrupt opponents' teams. The EV spread here, I decided to go with max speed because since I am a Focus Sash variant, it doesn't really matter if Grimmsnarl is bulky on this team, so I ended up going with max speed. I don't really have an attack that uses like my base attack stats, so I didn't have to invest into my attack unless I want Fake Out to do a bit extra damage, and it usually doesn't matter. So I felt like, okay, I could go max HP or I could go max defense. I decided to opt for max defense because of Rillaboom, like Fake Out and the Grassy Glide. I felt like having the max defense could matter here because it's able to take the Grassy Glide a little bit better and maybe survive in certain situations compared to the max HP. The max HP might be better in certain cases though, because I could definitely see it being used to absorb more attacks from Shadow Rider Calyx, for instance. Although I don't really think it changes too many Calyx. Maybe it does depending on the item of the Calyx Shadow Rider, so that might be something I would look into. However, I do think having the max defense wasn't a bad option here, and I do think it worked out. Quick Claw Ditto with the imposter ability with Transform. Now, Ditto is a cool Pokemon in this format because it's able to transform into other Pokemon and copy their stat changes, and even get more stat changes on top of it. For instance, it's able to reactivate the Zacian's ability that it transforms into and get another stage of an attack increase, which is absolutely incredible. And of course, with max move, stat changes are really likely in this format. So having the Ditto and also having an option to Dynamax Ditto with those options, imagine if you could Dynamax Zacian through Ditto, that would be absolutely insane. Although Steel Spike, maybe, but just click Behemoth Blade anyway. But Quick Claw Ditto here. Now, I had Choice Scarf originally until I added the Entei, and when I decided I wanted to Choice Scarf on Entei, I was like, what item do I give Ditto? And I really just wasn't sure. Like, a lot of the items were situational. I could have gave it like a Citrus Berry, but it might not have came into play. There were other items I was fearing. However, I thought, you know, if I'm trying to have Ditto as like an end game sweeper, I might as well go with the Quick Claw, because if I have the Quick Claw, sure, I can at least A, win a speed tie potentially, or B, have the Quick Claw activate. So it's a higher chance that Ditto's able to move first against the opponents that I'm copying. I might as well just like go with the Quick Claw. It didn't seem like a bad option at the time. I also thought about Weakness Policy because Weakness Policy could be kind of cool if you do transform into certain mons like a Zacian, and they try to target the Zacian with like a Max Quake, you protect, and then you get the Weakness Policy boost. I thought that would be pretty funny. However, I thought Quick Claw, you know what, it's not the most consistent, but it gives me higher odds, so I thought, okay, I'll take it, since otherwise I would have had Sash, which the Grimmsnarl has, and the Choice Guard that Entei has. Imposter for the ability, of course, you don't want the Limber, you always want to transform immediately, and transform you have to have on Ditto. For the EV spread, I do think this is the optimal Ditto EV spread. You want to have max HP on a Ditto because Ditto doesn't copy the opponent's HP stat. It always uses Ditto's own HP stat. So you do need as much HP as possible. So that's why you always go with the max HP on a Ditto. Then with the speed, I decided to go with max speed with a Tim Nature and 0 attack IVs. The reason you go with this kind of Ditto is because you want to potentially, if the worst case, your Ditto is blocked from transforming with Imposter due to the opponent being behind a substitute, for instance, or if it's like on the wrong side of the field for some reason, you just want to have a backup in case. And to have the max speed is so you can transform into those slower mods. And of course with Grimmsnarl, you can Scary Face and have Ditto outspeed, and then you can transform, which is also a possibility. Now there are a few other situations that could happen with Ditto, of course. Sometimes maybe you're transforming into a mon that can hit you super effectively. Like for instance, you try to transform into Eternatus and then they go for Dynamax Cannon. So there are like benefits and drawbacks, but I do think that the transforming, I mean, it probably doesn't matter as much. The max HP is just really important at the end of the day. I think having the speed is more optimal, but maybe it's better to go with a slower Ditto. It really just depends on the situation you find yourself in. Next Pokemon, Lustrous Orb Palkia with the telepathy ability with Hydro Pump, Spatial Rend, Earth Power, and Protect. Lustrous Orb, since the Life Orb was taken on the Dialga, I thought, you know what, why not go with the Lustrous Orb? I'm usually having the strong max Geyser options as well as the strong max dragon options from Palkia, and if I don't Dynamax, I still have like a little bit of boost in power, which is really nice. I could have gone with some other items like Citrus Berry, maybe a bit more bulky. However, I wanted this team to have a bit more of offensive pressure, so I thought, you know what, I'd rather have Lustrous Orb, and maybe it does affect a few calcs with the fake tiers, so I might as well just go with the Lustrous Orb to get as much power out of the Palkia as possible. Telepathy, the Boldo strat with Entei, same reason as the Dialga. Hydro Pump, Spatial Rend, Earth Power, Protect. The moves are a little bit repetitive. I could have maybe aimed for some different movesets. Like I could have had Thunder on the Palkia, and I did kind of consider it. And I might still consider it now because I didn't need Protect in a lot of cases. But I feel like, you know, if I'm setting up, if I have the Moongus that can get in with Spores, if I do have the Grimmsnarl that can help set up positions and, you know, Protect and stall out, maybe it's not the best to have both my Pokemon that want to Dynamax or both my restricteds that are vulnerable to not be able to Protect. So I felt, you know what, I might as well just have Protect on the Palkia, especially since Palkia is more likely to use Protect anyway in a lot of cases, because I'm probably Dynamaxing the Dialga in a lot of situations, and I might need to set up for something else. It also might be important for like getting Ditto into a right position, depending on if I have to like protect the Palkia to bring in the Ditto in the correct slot, for instance, and stall it out. I think it's really crucial. Now the EV spread here, I just went with a standard 4 HP, 252 special attack, 252 speed with a modest nature, and I really thought about this EV spread. I tried bulky Palkia for a bit. I did not like it on this team. I think the speed was like really crucial for certain things, and I just really wasn't digging like a slow bulky Palkia. And when I did take away from the special attack, because I felt like maybe I don't need all the special attack, I ended up missing KO. So I just, you know what, I was like, I'm just gonna put max special attack, max speed. It's good enough. It does the job I need it to do. I don't miss the knockouts that I think I will probably end up if I lose special attack. So that is the reason why I just ended up going with like a pretty standard Palkia with just 4 HP, 252 special attack, and 252 speed. I felt like I didn't need Timid because I don't really like going for the option with the speed tie on the Charizard if I have Scary Face, and the modest damage output I think is really important because I'm already losing out from only having Lustrous Orb compared to like a Life Orb on Palkia. So I might as well just get a little bit more damage output since I already have speed control anyway with the Entei and Grimmsnarl. Next Pokemon, the Choice Scarf Entei with Inner Focus, Flare Blitz, Crunch, Bulldoze, and Stone Edge. Entei is a fantastic Pokemon. I actually really like it, and it was like really got to shine in Series 10, I believe, when there was no Max and Fake Out was pretty everywhere. But Inner Focus is just so good. Being able to block through Intimidate is great, especially against Incineroar, and it's really nice to be able to always threaten a Zacian. It's huge. Choice Scarf Entei I felt like was a really good endgame cleaner, especially to like if I can leave the Zacian alone and take the knockouts on the other slots because they might protect the Zacian, because Sacred Sword is like one of the main ways I feel like most players usually had an answer to Dialga was going for an endgame Sacred Sword. I might as well just like, you know what, if I can ignore the Zacian slot, if I take the knockout on the other sides, I could revenge KO in the endgame with a Choice Scarf Entei. It's just really nice because I can even lead it too and it will be still really good. And that's the reason why I have this Entei here with Flare Blitz, Crunch, Bulldoze, and Stone Edge. Flare Blitz, you kind of need it to KO Zacian, especially because Sacred Fire doesn't do the job. You need that extra bit in power. Crunch helps against Calyx Shadow Rider, which I really like because I'm usually able to break the sash pretty consistently. So Crunch is a great way to revenge KO it later. Photos, of course, for the speed control. Stone Edge, I thought about this and I thought, okay, Charizard is still a little bit annoying, even with the Hailstorm option from Dialga and the Palkia. I might as well just have a backup plan to it, and I wasn't sure if I want Sacred Fire because I feel like I'd rather just click Flare Blitz since this is more of an endgame mon, so I don't really need the Sacred Fire in a lot of cases. I might as well just go for Flare Blitz and Stone Edge, I felt like, because I didn't need the Sacred Fire. I feel like I would be locking myself into Flare Blitz if I really need that situation, and Entei could lead against Charizard's Sun and really threaten with a powerful Stone Edge, which could make a lot of a difference here. For the EV spread, I decided to go with a pretty offensive Entei. I went with max attack Entei. The reason I went with max attack is so I can dish out as much damage as possible, especially since it's a late game cleaner. I might as well just go for attack. You don't really need as much bulk, especially with a Choice Scarf Entei. Might as well just dish out as much damage as possible, especially if they're like other factors that can apply, such as like reflect with Zacian. I might as well just have the maximum chance to KO as Zacian as possible. And then 236 speed here. I don't think there's a difference between 236 and 252 speed numbers. I don't think I'm running into other Choice Scarf Enteis with this team. And yeah, I only really need to outspeed Shadow Rider Calyrex with the Choice Scarf, and I don't feel like I really need the numbers otherwise. And then I just put the rest into HP and bulk. Overall, the Entei is supposed to hit hard, have a second form of speed control if it's necessary for my other restricted to do a lot of damage and setup, and the Entei was super solid. It was a really good endgame mon, especially since a lot of the games that I played, I felt like I did leave Zacian towards the endgame and was able to finish off with Flare Blitz, and it was really effective here and was really good against some other Pokemon that could give this team a little bit of trouble. You could also use this Entei to help against like Posing Amoonguss before the Dialga gets a max attack off, and a few other certain situations, which was really nice. Final Pokemon we have is the Cobra Berry Amoonguss, which Regenerator, Pollen Puff, Spore, Rage Powder, and Protect. I didn't really bring Amoonguss that much. However, I thought I needed a Pokemon that was good against Gastrodon, which was manageable with Fake Tears combinations with my restricteds. However, I felt like with Gastrodon, it could go for max Quakes, and if they get rid of the Grimmsnarl early, it's a big pain to handle. I was thinking, oh, Redirection is pretty useful. Amoonguss is a pretty good partner for Palkia and certain Dialga teams. Usually it's a Trick Room variant with Dialga that they're usually on. I thought, okay, maybe I could try out Amoonguss. It also helps my Trick Room matchup because I don't exactly have the best tools to stall out Trick Room, so I might as well add it. And that is why I decided to go with Amoonguss. I went with the Cobra Berry. I don't think the Cobra Berry was the best item choice. I just wasn't sure what I was going to put. Aqua Berry might have been more useful. I think Citrus Berry would have actually been pretty good in a lot of the scenarios that I brought it in, or maybe even Mental Herb. Like, I just felt like I would never really bring against Airstreamers because usually I would just leave Grimmsnarl in most cases, so I don't think I needed the Cobra Berry ever. So that is an item that could definitely be changed on this team. Regenerator, of course, better than Effect Spore. I like the ways to stall out Dynamax turns with Amoonguss. Pollen Puff, Spore, Rage Powder, Protect. Pollen Puff was a mistake. I was supposed to have Energy Ball and I just forgot to put Energy Ball, but it ended up working out because when I brought in Amoonguss, it was usually in games where Pollen Puff was actually more useful because I'd be able to lead like Amoonguss Dialga, I'd be able to boost up my defenses, and then I'd be able to Pollen Puff my Dialga, which is really nice because Dialga would have taken a lot of chip if I didn't go for the Rage Powder, where I would just go for Spores naturally. And then I'd be able to heal my Dialga, and basically I have a boosted defense Dialga that's dishing out a lot of damage because it's max special attack. And yeah, I really did like that option. So Pollen Puff ended up being a blessing in disguise. Or Rage Powder, pretty standard, and then Protect to preserve the Amoonguss. EV spread here is max HP, 156 defense, and 100 special defense with Sassy Nature. It's just able to take quite a bit of attacks, really. Not really anything too special about the Amoonguss. So how to use the team. Overall, I'd say the team really likes to utilize its Dynamax with one of its restricted. Either Dialga or Palkia really likes to Dynamax and usually lead off with like Entei or Grimmsnarl, because Grimmsnarl is able to really provide some big support with Fake Out, stalling out a few turns for some damage output. Scary Face and Fake Tears allows Palkia or Dialga to dish out a lot of damage. And then afterward, you try to focus down on a late game, usually with either Ditto, Entei, and your other restricted. Whether you let Dialga or Palkia, you have one of the others in the back usually, and then you try to sweep from there for the most part. Overall, it's just mainly about getting that damage with the straight, powerful Dynamax immediately, and then afterward, just cleaning up with your strong Pokemon, because Ditto and Entei are usually really good late game Pokemon, especially if you lead Entei. Entei also has some options, like Flare Blitz always threatens Zacian immediately, so you can lead like Entei Palkia and dish out quite a bit. You have the Boldo speed control as well, but of course Grimmsnarl is fantastic with the Fake Tears and the Scary Face pressure alongside it. You could also go with like an Amoonguss way to go passive right here, or you can bring Amoonguss in the back, of course, against certain Trick Room teams if Amoonguss can get spores off against like a Calyx Ice Rider, or if you need to play a more passive game with Regenerator, stall out some max turns. Amoonguss is fantastic for that as well. What are the common leads with this team? Overall, Grimmsnarl, Dialga, Grimmsnarl, Palkia are pretty strong. Of course, the fake tier scary face pressure that Grimmsnarl emits alongside Dialga and Palkia's powerful max moves is one of the core essential parts of this team. Dish out a lot of damage for an endgame cleanup. And then Entei plus Palkia or Dialga can really do well because he had the Bulldoze for speed control with the telepathy, as well as the Flareless that really does threaten exhaustion, and some other Pokemon, which is really nice here. You could also go with like more passive stuff. For instance, like the Amoonguss lead with Dialga or Palkia is pretty solid because you can stall out max turns usually with the Amoonguss, which is really nice. And the I would say are probably your most common leads. You don't usually lead Dialga or Palkia unless it's very specific. Maybe there'll be sometimes you lead something that's not Dialga and Palkia, like a Grimmsnarl Entei lead could be a thing if you just want to dish out a heavy damage with Entei and you want to set up for Dialga or Palkia late game. And Amoonguss, Grimmsnarl, or Amoonguss Entei can also accomplish that as well. Dialga and Palkia are definitely an interesting duo. They don't share the same common weaknesses. However, I felt like when one of them was good against the opposing team, usually both of them were good. But in some cases, when one of them was bad against the team, then the other one wasn't as great either. There were definitely some matchups I definitely preferred one to Dynamax over the other, but both of them would usually be good at the same time. However, there were just some matchups that they both struggled against, and I think it's because they have probably very similar moves, especially with Dragon and ground coverage. So that could be a thing that might be adjusted. There were some matchups, of course, that were really tough. For instance, Yveltal. I built this team a little bit before the IC, and then Assault Vest Yveltal, Life Orb Yveltal really started to shine there. And that is a matchup that definitely isn't that great with this team. You usually have to do like Spore things with Amoonguss and like League Grimmsnarl, and it's a really difficult one. There's some other matchups like opposing Dialga that can be a little bit troublesome depending on the situation. And yeah, it's just a really awkward duo because I feel like that both of them are really good against certain things, really awkward against others. And it's like the same restricted usually because they're good against the same restricteds for a lot of cases. Like they're both good against Kyogre generally. They're both good against Zacian if they're put in a favorable position, but they can also be weak to the Zacian if they are able to stall a Dynamax, for instance, in the late game, and a few other things. So it was definitely an interesting duo to try out. I would definitely explore the team again. I think if replacing the Amoonguss was a possibility, maybe try different partners with the Ditto. But I do really like the Grimmsnarl, Dialga, and Palkia. They were a lot of fun, and they were able to dish out a lot of damage and gave me like 2 different options. And it might be good in a best of 3 where if I go with like a Grimmsnarl, Dialga, and a Palkia is also a good option, I could also go with that as a potential lead for the next one. However, it was a little bit strange just having both Dynamax options have like very similar roles, I feel like. And that is the show. I hope you all enjoyed the thought process went behind the makings of the Dialga and Palkia team. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like down below, leave a comment down below. It really does help me out. And if you want to try out the team, there is the rental code on your screen. It's available for 2 weeks before it expires. Make sure you try it out. But otherwise, there is a payment available in the description down below. And why not check out the episodes if you haven't already, the episodes that this team was featured in. And of course, my other Series 12 content where I use a lot of fun teams and a lot of cool Pokemon. Make sure you check it out. But otherwise, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, people. And until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.